When you look at the phrase King Kong versus Godzilla 1962, your brain likely conjures a specific set of images. Men in rubber suits, a giant octopus made of real-life seafood, a gorilla getting supercharged by lightning and wrestling a dinosaur on Mount Fuji. To a modern audience, spoiled by flawless 4K visual effects and photorealistic rendering, this might look dated. It's easy to watch it today through a screen and think of it as campy B-movie schlock. But we have to check our modern bias at the door. If you were sitting in a packed movie theater in 1962, this wasn't silly. It was a jaw-dropping, bleeding-edge visual spectacle. This was the first time global audiences saw either of these legendary titans in glorious Technicolor and widescreen Tohoscope. It was an absolute event. To understand just how massive it was, you only have to look at the numbers. In Japan alone, King Kong vs. Godzilla pulled in a staggering 11.2 million theater admissions. To put that into perspective, modern Hollywood blockbusters like Godzilla x Kong, the new empire opened to just a fraction of that crowd in Japan. To this day, 1962 remains the most attended Godzilla movie in history. It wasn't just a hit, it was a cultural phenomenon. And behind the fun, there was a fascinating geopolitical heavyweight match playing out on screen. This was a literal clash of civilizations, the ultimate American monster versus the ultimate Japanese monster. King Kong represented the classic Golden Age Hollywood spectacle, the Western beast brought over from the States. Godzilla represented post-war Japan's homegrown cinematic icon. When they clashed, audiences weren't just watching two monsters fight. They were watching a symbolic pop culture wrestling match between two global superpowers. Yet director Ishiro Honda didn't make a somber war film. Instead, he crafted a razor-sharp satire of 1960s commercialism. The entire plot is driven by capitalism, a pharmaceutical company kidnapping a giant island god to use as a corporate marketing mascot to boost TV ratings. But a satire only works if the stakes feel real. How do you take a corporate comedy about a giant gorilla and an atomic lizard and make it feel like a sweeping mythological epic? You let the music do the heavy lifting, specifically the masterful compositions of Akira Ifukube, who gave each piece of this clash its own distinct, mesmerizing identity. It all begins in the film's opening seconds with the iconic main title track. This piece is a masterclass in musical storytelling, and it serves as the film's absolute artistic anchor. Think about how it opens. It hits you instantly with a wall of jagged, syncopated brass and rapid-fire strings. It is chaotic, metallic, and heavy, the auditory embodiment of unstoppable primeval panic. Ifukube uses this track to set a baseline of dignity. Before you ever see a monster on screen, the main title demands that you take this world seriously, balancing the corporate humor with a sense of genuine, breathtaking grandeur. But as the story shifts to Faro Island, Ifukube completely changes the musical landscape to define King Kong. For Kong's environment, we get the devil in the South Seas. It isn't cheap jungle movie stock music. Instead, Ifukube utilizes deep, primordial, heavy percussion backed by a slow, brooding brass melody that crawls right under your skin. It is slow, organic, and deeply hypnotic. When King Kong appears, he isn't a joke. He is a terrifying deity wrapped in a shroud of beautifully haunting mythic music. Then, you have the ultimate contrast. While Kong's music is organic and earthbound, Godzilla's entry theme, Godzilla's Resurrection, is pure metallic terror. Reworked here into its definitive legendary form, it begins with a slow, building dread as the iceberg shatters, before exploding into frantic heavy brass march sequences. Ifukube uses sharp, driving rhythms to convey a walking apocalypse. The brass sections don't sound like a standard movie orchestra. They sound like heavy machinery marching through the countryside. While the script is making us laugh at the foolishness of the human executives, this overarching musical brilliance is constantly reminding the audience of a deeper truth. These are gods walking the earth. This carries directly into the physical execution. Special effects director Eiji Tsuburaya heavily inspired the monster choreography by the massive popularity of professional wrestling at the time. Because the score establishes such an incredibly high level of artistic weight, every single frame of the final battle at Mount Fuji is elevated. It doesn't look like a joke. It feels like the collision of two ancient worlds, a grand heavyweight championship scaled up to the heavens. King Kong vs. Godzilla is a perfect movie because it effortlessly wears multiple masks. It is a hilarious critique of corporate greed, a historic box office record holder, a thrilling crossover event, and a beautifully shot piece of mid-century science fiction. The film takes a premise that could have been completely ridiculous and elevates it into something eternal, something mythic. It proved that monsters didn't just belong in the dark corners of horror history. They belonged on the grandest, most beautiful stage possible, and that is why it is a masterpiece.
No more! I'm sick of Godzilla!